Here's Johnny.
Okay, guys, welcome to another Budget Guitar Show. And with me today on the show, we have the legend that is John Robson.
Legend. I don't know about legend. How are you, Johnny? You all right, mate?
Yeah, I'm not too bad. I'm not too bad. So let's sort of get into it and see. Let the people know how you came to guitar.
Right. Well, it's the first piece of music I ever heard that made me realise that music could make you feel that happy as music makes you feel was Apache by the Shadows. We had, like, when I was really properly little, like well preschool, we had this freak weather event where it turned as black as night in the middle of the day. And I was being babysat by my grandmother at the time, and she was like really staunch Catholic, and she thought it was like the end of days or something, and because it literally went like midnight at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and the TV went off. I think it was probably watching the Wombles or something like that, and anyway, the only thing that you could do to kind of stop me freaking out was to put the radio on, and Apache by the Shadows came on, and suddenly I was just like in another world, and that planted the seed. As I say, I was probably about 2-3 year old at the time, but I didn't actually start playing the guitar till I was 11, and then it was just like, well, that's school out the window, it just became, that's all I wanted to do.
Oh, fair enough. Do you remember what your first guitar was?
It was a K folk steel string acoustic with an action like an egg slicer, and it turned up. I'd been waiting all the big summer holidays from school. I'd been waiting for it all that holiday, and it was out of stock, or it didn't turn up or whatever, and it turned up on my first day back at school. So when I came home from school, on my first day at the big school, it was there waiting for me.
Oh, fantastic. So do you still have it, or did you get rid of that many?
No, that kind of, I don't think I even passed it on to anybody else. I think it was so battered and kind of abused that it ended up just going to the council tip.
Fair enough. And musically, what was it other than Apache? When you started playing the guitar, what was it that was sort of driving you on and made you want to learn?
Well, anything that felt achievable. There was a lot of 50s rock and roll around at the time. Because Happy Days was the big TV show, Grease was the big movie, Shawaddy Waddy were the band that were in the charts all the time. So there was a lot of that sort of stuff around. And there was a lot of punk around as well, and I could hear that, punk was basically just a reinvention of rock and roll.
Yeah.
Because they just sounded so similar. Like punk sounded like an updated version of rock and roll. So I got into both of those, because like 3 chords and the truth, that's all you needed, and then from the rock and roll side of things, I started getting into kind of blues, and then from there into jazz a little bit, and then from the punk side of things, that led me into the more kind of raucous, rocky stuff, and the two things were running parallel, really.
Excellent stuff. Yeah, because like if you listen to some of the Sex Pistols stuff, it is old rock and roll riffs.
Steve Jones listened to a Chuck Berry record or two in his time. You can tell that.
Definitely, yeah, definitely. And same with Johnny Thunders.
Yep.
But also there's, dare I say, this ABBA in Pretty Vacant. The main riff is actually ripped from SOS by ABBA. If you listen to the two carefully, you can just about spot it. But
Now you
yeah,
mention it, yeah, you can't. Yeah, okay, yeah.
you know, sorry to anybody like me who's a big Pistols fan out there, but you know, so okay. And then when did you sort of start doing teaching for guitar?
Well, you see, the plan was, I mean, I'm in the northeast of England, and in the early 80s, when I left school, you don't turn around to your careers officer or your parents and say, I want to be a musician, because they just laugh at you. Um, so, I was pretty good at sciencey kind of stuff. And I ended up, long story short, I ended up moving to the Lake District, where there was a merchant Navy radio officer training college there.
Yeah.
And I basically did that course and came out with a load of electronics qualifications. Didn't go to sea because I was useless at Morse code, and basically ended up working as a lab rat in an electronics company, just doing lab tests and stuff on electronic components. Got made redundant from there, and I didn't want to be on the dole. I didn't want to, kind of sign on. So I basically just put an ad in the local paper, guitar lessons, and sort of learned on the job, really. And that was 91 I started doing that. So I guess it's 30 years this year.
Oh wow, yeah. Well, it does show, because you certainly know your way around a fretboard, I have to say. I mean, I started watching you. I found your channel because of some of the lessons and things that you were doing on there, because I wanted to try and be a better lead player. So I was trawling through your videos and trying to copy this. And what I like about it is you do it in a way that somebody like me can understand, rather than some of the guitar teachers that I've seen where they already expect you to know, 5 million notes.
Yeah, well, the thing is, I learned it that way. That the way that you learn it, well, that hopefully people learn it from me, is the way I learned it, by figuring it out, thinking in terms of, okay, so I can add that note that's 2 frets above that one. So I always try and talk about in terms of, like, go for that note which is this many frets away, rather than a 4th or a flattened 6th or something like that.
Yeah,
I mean, I've got that sort of terminology under my belt now, and I'll use it in lessons with students once I've got them there. But it's like, never assume that people have the jargon under the belt, because just because you don't know the jargon, it doesn't mean that you don't know what you're doing.
yeah.
It just means that it's like, I always liken it to, anytime you add, if you're cooking, if you add an ingredient to a stew or a casserole, you are affecting the chemical balance of what's going on there. But do you really need to know what's going on at a molecular level to know that it needs more salt?
Yeah. I understand that. Yeah. And so your YouTube channel, how did that sort of start?
Okay, right. Well, I had a YouTube channel before they were called channels. I started on in 2008, and it was just it wasn't really anything. I don't think you could even monetize videos back then. It was just like a little thing that people did as a hobby. So that's what I was doing. And between 2008 and 2018, I'd got like 250 subscribers. If I was lucky, a video would get 30 views or something. So I knew nobody was really paying me any attention. So I knew it didn't really matter what I said.
Right.
Okay. I used to, it was effectively like just trekking up to the top of the mountain and shouting into the wind. And I did this one video in 2018, January or February 2018, basically having a little bit of a pop at Fender, because there is a combination of features on a Strat that I would say is an ideal Strat. Okay, and Fender don't make it.
Right.
And the video was called the Strat that Fender won't let you own. And suddenly it's got like, instead of 30 or 40 views, it's got 1,000, then 2,000, then 5,000, and Not all of the responses were positive. It has to be said. There were a lot of people who were, took umbrage at me, a limey, having a bit of a slagging off of an American company.
Yeah.
So that caused a bit of upset. But I found out pretty early on that okay, so you don't like what I've said. Excuse me if I don't care. So it's just. I think because I was like, gosh, where are we? That was 2018, so I was in my 50s by the time I did that. So I had enough miles on the clock to have to have a thick enough skin,
Yeah.
really, to not really care about people, the caps lock warriors, as I call them, slagging me off. But you know what? That video got me over the line for monetization, and then when I got the first sort of paycheck from YouTube, I thought, okay, this is a revenue stream. I better start taking it a bit seriously. So I did.
Oh, fair play. Yeah. Because that's what we all want to do. I mean, I think I'm at 310 subs at the moment. And some of the videos get good views, some don't. It's just whatever the content is, I suppose. Whether people.
Well, Rick Beato says that the most valuable piece of advice he was given when he started on YouTube he's only been on since 2016. He says the most valuable bit of advice he was given was just keep uploading. And that's what, as soon as he said that, that's all I've done,
Yeah.
If you get a video that doesn't get the views you want, well, just try get some more on the next one,
Yeah, that's it. That's it exactly. That's what I keep trying to do. So, guitar-wise, your first one was that K.
Yeah.
So, when did you sort of get an instrument that you really thought, right, this is a good piece of gear, and what was it?
It was a Gibson Les Paul Deluxe. The ones with the little mini humbuckers. Now, this is 84, and I'm at college at the time. Okay. And this is sort of the mid 80s, and the fashionable guitar at the time was, some kind of single humbucker super strat with a pointy headstock and a Floyd Rose, and that was the guitar that and that's what this guy who had this Les Paul Deluxe wanted. So I picked it up reasonably cheap. The other reason it was reasonably cheap was because it was absolutely knackered. He painted it, well, I don't know if he'd done it, but somebody had painted it in camouflage colours.
Right.
With like some horrible cheap, like did you ever make Airfix kits when you were a kid?
Yeah.
That paint that comes with it has a particular smell. Well, that's what the guitar smelled like.
Oh, that like enamel paint sort of.
Yeah, and the neck pickup didn't work. But you know what? It was a Gibson electric guitar, and it was mine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I get that. I mean, I remember a chap when I was at school, and he said to me, "Oh, my dad's got a guitar, and he doesn't use it." So I said, "Okay, I'll give you a £5 for it." So he went. Next day, he brings this guitar in, and it's only a Firebird, a Gibson Firebird. Now, this had been battered about and all of that. It was dusty and all of this, but it was still a Gibson Firebird. So I gave him the £5, and it, as you said, it was mine. Until 3 days later, when his father found out and marched him all the way over to my house and gave me the £5 back and took the guitar.
Yeah.
So obviously I do the budget guitar show. Which of the budget brands have you tried out for yourself?
Well, pretty much all of them, really. There's only a couple that I haven't really got my hands on yet. I'm still curious about SX guitars. I've never tried those.
Right.
And Firefly is a brand that we keep hearing about, but they're like hen's teeth to come across in the UK.
Yeah.
I think most people in the US get them from Amazon, but they're not on Amazon UK. So I'm keeping my ear to the ground for one of those. But the thing that you quite rightly highlight in your show is that, gosh, I mean, I don't know, how old are you, Johnny?
Mate, I'll be 42 next month.
Right, okay, so I've got about 10 year on you then. Right, well, back in 1978 when I first started playing the guitar, a cheap guitar was a nasty guitar because that's all it was, and you dreamed that one day, you knew that owning a Fender or a Gibson, although I did own a Gibson, the first of a few, but back in 1978, the fact that, it was a pipe dream that you'd own a guitar like that. You just wanted something that played nice and that sounded good and, didn't look too different from a Stratocaster or a Les Paul. And that's where we're at now with budget guitars. You can buy something for, I mean, my first electric guitar, not my first one, but my first reasonable one, was a Satellite Les Paul copy, and got that in 1980.
I had a Satellite bass years ago.
Satellite bass.
Yeah, it was all like wood, sort of coloured. You could tell it looked like two pieces of wood joined together.
That Satellite Les Paul, that was 80 quid in 1980. Which, what's that in today's money? It's probably about 300, something like that.
Yeah.
Now, you go out and try and buy a 300 quid guitar these days that's made of plywood. It's just not going to happen because the quality has got better. Yeah.
I mean, what did you think of the Harley Benton ES355 copy that you had?
That was a lovely guitar. The HB35, wasn't it? That was a gorgeous guitar. The HB35 Plus was the last one that I had. And how I came to get that was, well, I had the HB35, which was the sort of step down, which just had like the ceramic pickups in it. Wasn't a bad guitar.
Yeah.
And somebody on the live stream asked me, what did I think of it? And I said, well, it was a lovely guitar. Well, why haven't you still got it? And well, the answer is our dog got ill, and that there was a insurance excess to pay on the vet's bill. Yeah. So that was on the Friday on the live stream, and on the Saturday morning, through bleary eyes, because I've had a few beers on the Friday night, I'm checking my email, and thank you for your order with Toman. I thought, what have I done? Getting the credit card out when you're drunk. But it wasn't. Yeah. It was a chap called Bob in the States who was watching the live stream and saw that I'd sold the guitar to pay for the dog's vet's bill, and bought me another one. So that was such a lovely gesture, and with Bob's blessing, because at the time this guitar was in the pipeline, Blondie here.
Yeah.
So I thought, well, I don't need this guitar, so I passed it on to that kids' charity that I support. I passed it on to them, and they auctioned it off and raised a bit of cash with it.
Oh, brilliant! So tell us a little bit about Zoe's Place that you support.
Right. Well, it goes back to when like I said earlier, when I first decided that I was going to take the YouTube channel kind of seriously. I noticed that, the videos that get the most views are the ones where I'm reviewing a guitar. Mm-hmm. I can't afford to go out and buy a guitar every time I want to make a video. Okay. I had like 1,500 subscribers at the time, so that doesn't really give you the clout to go to companies and say, give me a guitar for my YouTube channel. So basically, long story short, I started a GoFundMe to raise money to buy these guitars. And the idea was that the money would come in through the GoFundMe. I would earn some revenue by making videos with these guitars. Then I would auction the guitars off and give the money to Zoe's Place.
Yeah.
Which suited everybody, all the way around. And I only kind of pulled the plug on that because, the GoFundMe was starting to kind of get a little bit, that was slowing down a little bit. The money wasn't coming in. And fair enough, there's compassion fatigue. People think, well, I've given him a £5 once for his charity,
Yeah.
So, so I basically, when there was enough money in the GoFundMe to buy one last guitar I did, I can't remember which one it was. It might have been one of the PRSs I did. Can't remember. But basically, I wound that up. But people still send me guitars and say, will this go to Zoe's place? Will this do for Zoe's place? Yeah. And there's one of the ladies who works there, has to drive past the end of our road on her way to work. So whenever I've got a guitar, I just drop her a quick text and say, another one for you.
Yeah, brilliant stuff.
And they use them as raffle prizes and stuff, And
Excellent, excellent. I mean, I actually got my first Harley Benton because of you. And one of your videos, you reviewed the original Flying V that they did, the black. And as I watched your videos, and then this one came up, and I was in the market for a Flying V. I wanted one, and I bought it, and on your review, and didn't have a very good sort of experience, because when it came, the headstock had been chipped, and it just wasn't sounding right, and all of this. So I did get some money back from them on that one. Then I changed the pickups in it and played it 3 or 4 times, and then it went to a second-hand shop.
you never bonded with it then?
I did, but at the time I was listening to a lot of people who, obviously guitarists, who would completely sort of say, well, look, a guitar can't be any good if it only costs like £108 or whatever it is, but since then I've sort of formed my own opinions of them, and I will get another one. I have the Paisley one at the moment, and I think they're quite good.
It's another brand I've never tried, actually. I'll have to get round to having a look at those. I mean, the reason why Harley Bentons are so cheap, and I just want to make this absolutely clear now, I have no business relationship with Harley Benton or Toman or anything like that, is it's basically one of my students used to be, one of my guy used to be my student. I still see him occasionally because he only lives a couple of streets away. But he used to have an online guitar retail business, and he was telling me that the supply chain goes essentially from factory to importer to wholesaler to retailer to you. Okay, that's essentially the supply chain. But with Harley Benton, it goes from factory to retailer to you.
Yeah.
So it's just those middlemen that they're cutting out, that each of which adds, kind of a chunk of money onto the final price you pay. And it has to be said, fair's fair. Another reason Harley Bentons are so cheap is because they do tend to outsource their quality control to the customer.
Yeah. Definitely. I've had issues with, I think, 3 or 4 that I bought from them, that I've managed to get them sorted out. That's not a problem. But yeah, definitely with that. So the guitar that you had there, the Blondie, that wasn't that is it Scott's Guitars who did that?
Scott Guitars, yes. A chap who's been Dan, he's called, not Dan Scott. It's Dan O'Sullivan, but the company's named after his son, Scott. He's basically the 5th generation in a family of master cabinet makers, and he plays guitar. So he thought, hello, I know what makes a good guitar. I know my way around some woodworking tools. Let's have a go and see if I can build a guitar. And he brought his prototype up to me to, the first guitar he'd ever built, to review, and it was an absolute gorgeous guitar, really something special. And then a couple of days later, he said, would you like me to build you a signature model? So I said, oh, yes, please. And that's how that came out. I mean, I paid for this guitar. Yes, I do get a little bit of a commission off all the subsequent ones he sells, which will eventually end up paying for this guitar. But it's not like I got a freebie. I handed over money for Blondie there, and quite happily did so.
Excellent. And I saw that you is it Vanson pickups that you've got?
Yep.
I know you did something with about the Vanson pickups, which I ended up getting and putting in the Flying V.
Hmm.
So that's got Vansons in again from one of your videos. But what would you say was the worst guitar that you've ever had in your hands?
Well, there's two answers to this. The worst guitar by a country mile was probably the first electric guitar that I ever had, which was a Woolworths Top 20. That was the one before
Oh,
the satellite Les Paul.
yeah,
If you don't know what a Woolworths Top 20 is, they were all, I think they were sold in the States under the brand name of, I think, is it pronounced Tisco or Tisco or Tiesco or
yeah,
that brand? Anyway, just Google them. It's essentially a guitar-shaped lump of plywood holding together a bunch of sharp edges. Um, but I didn't think of it as the worst guitar ever because it was my first electric guitar, and the thrill of being able to strum a chord here and for the sound to be happening over there,
yeah,
you know, that was a big thrill. But it was a horrible guitar in retrospect. The worst guitar I've ever owned, apart from that, just go to the late 80s, early 90s. I had a succession of super stratty kind of Floyd Rose kind of things. I had a Jackson, I had an Ibanez, I had a Fender heavy metal Strat, I had a bunch of these kind of, these hair metal guitars. Um, because that's what all the shredders were playing, and I wanted to kind of be a little bit like that, I suppose.
yeah.
Um, but me and locking trems do not get on. So just worst guitar that, in terms of a playing experience, just anything with a Floyd Rose.
Yeah, I've read a lot about people saying that they're impossible to keep in tune and everything else. So touch wood, I'm not gonna ever deal with one. But I did have what was it? You mentioned Ibanez. I had an Ibanez Blazer series
Mm-hmm.
back in the early '90s that somebody sold to me. That was a fantastic guitar. But again, like you said earlier, with the paints. I decided to get some of those enamel paints because it was a wood grain finish,
Mm-hmm.
and I painted a cartoon of Sid Vicious onto the back of it, and it looked absolutely terrible. So I ended up scratching it off with I think it was an end of a dart that I used to scratch it off, and then ended up flogging it to somebody.
Mm-hmm.
I think they were going to buff it out and do what they could to it, but and that was quite a nice guitar. But at that time I wasn't really taking anything seriously, so
Mm-hmm.
it went, and the £60 that I got for it got spent on probably beer. But so you've got the channel, you've got everything going. What do you think what do you think you will be doing with the channel in, say, 3 years?
Well, no radical changes planned, to be honest. I seem to have settled into, because when lockdown first came in, I thought, well, this is going to kill my business. So what's the lesson business? It didn't. There was a lot of people furloughed, and with time on their hands and kind of 80% of the salary coming in, who started wanting Zoom lessons off me.
Yeah.
But I thought it was going to kind of kill that, so I went from doing 2 videos a week to, well, I do Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, live stream on a Friday, and a Sunday video now. So that's 6 videos a week,
Yeah.
Including the live stream. And I've settled into a rhythm with that. I've got a good workflow. I can kind of keep just cranking them out. That drives people to my door for lessons, and it helps to sell the courses that I've got, and the Patreon thing as well. So I'm just basically it ain't broke, so I ain't gonna fix it. I'm just gonna crack on doing what I'm doing, really.
Excellent, good stuff. I'm glad to hear that, because I do enjoy the channel very much.
Well, thank you.
You also record your own music, don't you?
Well, not so much these days. I think the last album I did was 2017, so that's like 4 years ago. You know, it's relatively easy to produce, you know, high quality in terms of production. It's not for me to say whether my music is high quality. I'll leave that for others to decide. But in terms of production, you know, you can do in your own home now what you used to have to go into a studio to do.
Yeah.
And you know, for I think it's 20 quid a year using DistroKid, you can get your music on Spotify, Amazon, iTunes, Apple Music, Google Play, all of the major music retailers. So that's a trickle of money that's coming in. The real money, the real revenue stream from being a musician is to gig. And as we've seen with various limitations and restrictions, that can be turned off like a tap. So, and to be honest with you, I'm 54 years old, right? My days of humping gear in and out of venues and, you know, skinning your knuckles, lugging bass bins up and down a fire escape, you know, I've done that. I've ticked that box. You know, I'm not in a hurry to go back and do it again. You know, I've got thousands of gigs under my belt, and you know, it's like, well, what's the difference between a large pizza and a working musician? The pizza can feed a family. That there's a lot of truth in that, you know.
Yeah. I mean, I've seen it with gigs. I mean, the band that I'm in at the moment, we've been at it now, I think, nearly 12 years, Voodoo Club, as a covers band. But we tend to now take it as sort of, we'll gig when we want to gig, and we'll go out. Oh yeah, this place has bands on, right? We'll get a date from them, and we'll go in like a bull in a china shop, get the date, get the gig, and that'll be it, you know. So we, you know, we're not going to be mega stars. Certainly not. I tried that with other bands over the years, and it just doesn't work out. So just
it's not a meritocracy. It's, you know, it's you've got to be good, but you've also got to be very, very lucky. And you know, the nature of the beast is that not everybody is lucky. So you know.
Yeah, absolutely correct. So if you want to, there will be links in the video description for all of your things. But if people want to have a lesson from you, where can they find all that out?
Probably the easiest place is just go to my website, which is johnrobsonmusic.co.uk. And there's a lessons page on there where you can sign up for the Udemy courses, or you can buy a gift certificate if anybody's interested in buying guitar lessons as a Christmas gift there, or you can just email me and we can set up like a Zoom thing like we're doing now for guitar lessons, basically.
Excellent stuff. Okay.
Oh, and the first lesson's free.
Oh yeah, I read that. Yeah. Okay, so one final question then. Is there a guitar that you have always wanted to get your hands on, even just for a few minutes, just to play on? If there is, what is it?
Are we talking a particular make and model, or an actual that one guitar in particular?
Either.
Right, okay. There's two of those kind of one guitars in particular that I would love to just, you know, say I've played that. Even if I've only strummed a D chord on it, I've played it. One is a Fender Stratocaster called Blackie, which used to belong to Eric Clapton. And the great paradox about Blackie is I don't think Eric ever had a better tone than he had with Blackie. But it was in the worst period of his career in terms of his playing. Just every now and again, he would just get that kind of spark. Like if you're familiar with Roger Waters, I know prog rock isn't really your kind of thing, but take a listen to a Roger Waters album called The Pros and Cons of Hitchhiking, where Eric plays on that, and he's playing Blackie, and what a tone, and he's really got the fire in his belly on that track. So that's one guitar, Eric Clapton's Blackie, and the other one, of course, is the Peter Green, Gary Moore, Les Paul.
Yeah.
Now owned by Kirk Hammett.
Yeah.
And I'm really glad that Kirk's got that, actually, because it gets taken out and it gets gigged. It's not in a glass case or a bank vault,
Yeah, I've always said this about iconic sort of guitars. It is better if somebody's got it and they're actually using it for the purpose it was made for.
Yep.
I mean, we both have all these guitars on the walls, but we use them.
Yep.
I can't see the point of buying a guitar and especially paying that kind of money for it if it's just going to be, as you say, in a glass case for people to look at. Maybe.
Well, it's there's a certain type of chap, isn't there? And it usually is a chap who, the kids have left home, the mortgage is paid off. He's kind of senior enough in his job that he's got a bit of spare cash, and this year it's a custom shop Les Paul. Next year it'll be some exclusive set of golf bats, or then it'll be a Harley Davidson the next year. It's just these little kind of certificates of achievement that people award themselves, which is fair enough. It's free country. Do what you want with your own money, but I'd much rather a good instrument goes to somebody that's going to play it.
Absolutely. Okay, well, thanks for talking to me, John. It's been fantastic to have you on the show.
Well, thank you.
And keep doing what you're doing on the channel, because, like I say, I absolutely love it. And when you do those lessons and how the scales and things like that, that really does help out people like myself. Who can
thank you.
Click on a video and there it is being explained. Like I say, to the layman like myself can understand it, and we can cop some of that as well, So thank you very much for everything you do on the channel, and long may it continue.
Thanks for having us, Johnny. It's been a blast.
Cheers, mate. Thanks very much.
Take care now. Bye-bye.